Hi, thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. What we're going to do here is cover the Workspot design concepts. So this playbook is intended for MSPs, partners, and customers that want to deploy Workspot, anywhere from a simple lab environment to a full-blown enterprise solution. So what we'll do here is walk through the fundamental design concept and show you how it'll scale out. So now we want to take a look at foundational AWS design concepts. We're going to look at this from the perspective of a two-box design, and this could easily be a single-box design as well, but I wanted to show you the networking component. And the reason I wanted to focus in on AWS over the other clouds, because there's a slight difference here that folks need to understand, because we do support core and EC2. So there's folks out there wondering, well, how exactly does that look? So let me present that to you. So if we look at Workspot on AWS Workspaces core from a networking design concept, what we have here essentially in this design is AWS core has dedicated subnets, and we could actually have dedicated subnets for EC2, thus separating the two environments, but within the same account. And so we have the workspaces that folks are familiar with in their particular regions and their template bundles, as they call them. And Workspot control can connect specifically to the Workspot core layer. And what happens here, which is a little different from everything else, is we actually pass off the provisioning capabilities to AWS core, which is a little different from what we normally do because we usually interact directly with the cloud provider APIs and do the provisioning ourselves. But in this integration, AWS core is doing the provisioning. So Workspot control can actually use this bundle that gets created and provision those desktops from Workspot control. So you get the added benefit of a management layer on top of Workspaces that provides a little wider range of support. So in other words, if I had non-persistent use cases that core doesn't support, we could put those on EC2. Additionally, because of the control plane that Workspot has, we can connect in, as you've seen earlier, into other clouds. So we can greatly extend the capabilities of an Amazon Workspaces core deployment. And of course, the network connectivity is the same concept where we have either VPC peers, VPNs, and in the AWS world, we have transit gateways that can connect over to other resources, an Active Directory service and Microsoft Active Directory is actually a requirement of core. So we need that anyways. Now, of course, if we wanted to go a single box design, we could simply put an AD domain controller down here. But in any event, it's quite common that folks need to access other resources. So that's why I want to illustrate this with the networking piece included. But as you can see, it's the same foundational concept. It's just there's a subtle nuanced difference when it comes to our AWS support. So if I take this to the next level, so this is AWS core, and there's potential to have to expand that concept into EC2 or other clouds. So if we look at that, what changes here is now, as you can see, we've introduced EC2 cloud desktops and regions into the mix here, again, within that single account. And the gateways are shared between core and EC2, which is nice. So I don't have to, the core desktops and the EC2 desktops all come through the same gateways. But what's different here is we also, Workspot control actually has a connection into the EC2 layer as well. So that way, simultaneously, we can support both. And again, the same networking stuff applies, and you're using the Workspot client to do the connectivity to that. Now, if we take this out a little step further, this is where we have to combine different use cases like cloud apps on EC2 or non-persistent desktops on EC2 or maybe some persistent bundles that aren't available on core. So that's basically the overview of what that looks like. Now, if we want to introduce an identity provider in this example, because we still need AD for the core layer, so we can't do pure Entra ID only. So what we need to do is introduce that Entra ID hybrid type of concept. So in this example here, what you'll see gets added into the mix is there's an AD connector, and we actually in this design put the domain controller right inside the EC2 part, and Workspot Enterprise Connector comes back in the mix because that's required for AD group lookups. And then, of course, we've got the Azure AD Connect element to this, syncing with the customer's tenant. So going back to our earlier designs from the Workspot client perspective, they get redirected to Azure. Whatever MFA, whatever conditional access, all that kind of good stuff comes in play out of the scope of what we're doing here. And then they come get the token, come back to the gateway and access either EC2 or core resources. So that's really the concept right there. So I just wanted to illustrate that. Maybe at some point, core will support Entra ID only, but in the meantime, this is the design we've got for a couple customers today. Again, a little summary on that, on what that looks like and why we would do that.